Everyone's giving out advice at the moment, so I thought I'd join in with some life lessons that I have learned by doing things I really should have been far too sensible to do. Don't put macaroni in a wine bottle. They're called elbows for a reason. Don't ignore the sound of the rain. You're either hearing your laundry getting wet or the death cries of your burning food. Don't think, I can carry all this up the stairs in the dark, especially when two of those things are a mug of tea and your laptop. Don't look too close at the donut display in ant season. Similarly, if you're squeamish about flies, don't inspect that organic broccoli you've half eaten. An unwise young woman once wrote, "If you haven't coaxed sugar out of a wine bottle with a knitting needle, you haven't lived." No! Don't pour asafoetida on your porridge in the belief that it is ginger. If you're unwilling to read labels, learn to use your sense of smell. Don't down a margarita after eating a particularly spicy chili just because it's the only liquid to hand. Don't cycle drunk. Furthermore, neither harem pants nor flip-flops are advisable wear for cyclists. And finally, we may all be in the gutter, but for goodness sake, whilst riding a bicycle, don't look up at the stars. On the subject of advice, today's recommendation is The Tough Guide to Fantasyland by Diana Wynne Jones. If you haven't heard of her, she is the author of Howl's Moving Castle and many other amazing children's books. This book is kind of like a 90s book version of TV tropes, particularly for fantasy. It's a great book to read if you write fantasy, particularly because it's got so many tropes in it that you either want to avoid or just be aware of generally, but also if you read fantasy, it's just hilarious. It's mainly talking about tropes in high fantasy of the Lord of the Rings type and all the fantasy that has spawned, but generally, like, there are a lot of tropes in this that are still a huge thing, that have mutated, but you can still really see them in modern fantasy. As all good fantasy books do, it starts off with a map. So we've got the outer ocean, the Great Northern Barrier, the smoking mountain of Gwood, and Nuneaton. So I'll just read you some of my favourite entries. The gay mage may be one of your companions on the tour. He will be very beautiful and he will dress in gorgeous colours. He will have long hair which may be silver blonde. He will ache with sensitivity. He will not like to fight or be angry with people. Despite all this, he will be surprisingly strong, competent and determined, and he will be very good at magic indeed. He will fall in love while on the tour and suffer other disasters, but this will not impair his efficiency in the least. You will find him giving you a back rub and aromatherapy late in the tour at some point when he ought to be dead. A valuable companion. Just gonna say, the gay mage is not dead. Also Merlin. Common cold. This is one of many viral nuisances not present. You can get as wet, cold and tired as you like, and you will still not catch cold. But see, plague. Shall I? Yeah. Plague visits certain areas unpredictably and kills a lot of people. Though this is not surprising, given the amount of refuse lying about, the relative absence of bacteria or viruses suggests that the cause may be magical. Indeed, on investigation, this usually proves to be so. The Dark Lord or a minion has tried to stamp out a town or city. Tourists need not be alarmed. The Dark Lord will not proceed against any tours with such underhand tricks. No tourist catches plague. The normal pattern is for this plague to have visited 10 or so years before your tour, when it will have killed the parents of at least one of your companions. Very rarely you will enter a city in the grip of plague and be forced to pick your way among hideously blotched corpses lying in the streets. but it will not be catching. The ecology of Fantasyland is in a bad way. It is full of empty niches. To start with, there are few or no bacteria. We can see this by the way refuse and other pieces of squalor lie about in heaps which fail to rot down. To add to this, there are few or no insects, except for fleas, some localised bees, numerous silkworms somewhere in the fanatic caliphates, and clouds of mosquitoes in the marshes. Both these empty niches mean that all crops will be poor. Perhaps this explains the crop failures more usually blamed on magic or the personality defects of kings. There are also very few birds. In the absence of bacteria and insects, one might expect plants and birds to adapt so that birds do the pollinating as well as their normal task of spreading the seeds, but this is not the case. The one species that seems to be moving into the niche normally occupied by birds is the leathery-winged avian, but these are predators, not seed feeders or pollinators. And in the absence of animals, we have to ask what exactly the leathery-winged avian feeds on. Perhaps we should conjecture the existence of lots of juicy little bats. These would come forth silently at night and therefore remain largely unobserved. We should not be surprised that so many trees have become mobile. They have to move about in order to find more fertile ground and shed their seeds in it. The food chains are in a bad way. Magical irradiation has resulted in hungry slimes, dark twisted plants that try to eat people in a variety of ingenious ways, and numerous highly active animals with a taste for human flesh. This is most encouraging. All these living things, along with monsters and mutant nasties, are flourishing and spreading with a strength and vitality that suggests that in time to come they will move out into all the vacant ecological niches. Fantasyland will become filled with aggressive plants and vicious animals. Humans will find themselves near the bottom of every food chain. All will be well.